The human trade station known as Port Helios floated quietly at the edge of mapped space, a massive ring of steel and light suspended between the stars. It was a place built for profit, diplomacy, and careful distrust. Every day, traders from dozens of alien species passed through its docks, bringing rare metals, living crystals, and technologies that could change entire worlds. Human security forces were trained to expect anything, except what stepped through Dock 7 that cycle. The docking bay doors opened with their usual mechanical hum, and the scanners lit up as a single small vessel settled onto the platform. It was not armed. It was not shielded in any advanced way. In fact, it barely met the safety standards for interstellar travel. Officers exchanged confused looks as the ship's hatch slowly lowered. No entourage followed. No guards emerged. Instead, a lone figure stepped forward. She was small, far smaller than any adult trader humans had seen before. Her species was unfamiliar, her skin softly luminescent, her eyes wide and dark, reflecting the station lights. She wore simple ceremonial clothing, carefully maintained but clearly old. The child walked forward without hesitation, her posture straight, her steps calm. Human guards instinctively raised their weapons, not in threat, but in confusion. Children did not come to trade stations alone. The lead trade officer stepped forward, his voice steady but cautious. He asked where her delegation was, where her escort had gone. The girl looked up at him, her expression composed in a way that felt deeply unsettling. Then she spoke, her voice soft, perfectly translated by the station's universal system. "My mother couldn't come to trade," she said. "So I came instead." The words echoed across the docking bay. Conversation stopped. Even the background hum of machinery seemed to fade. For a moment, no one spoke. Humans had negotiated. With warlords, diplomats, and queens, but never with a child who spoke as if this were the most natural thing in the universe. Security scans intensified. The station's system swept over the girl and her ship, searching for hidden weapons, biological threats, or deception. The results made no sense. Her vessel carried no cargo of value, no advanced weapons, and no life signs beyond her own. Yet something about the readings triggered a silent alert among the officers. There was an anomaly not dangerous, but significant. The girl waited patiently as humans whispered among themselves. She showed no fear, no impatience. Her eyes followed every movement with quiet awareness, as if she understood far more than she let on. When asked her name and species, she answered without hesitation, speaking of her people with respect and formality. She explained that her mother had been the official trade representative, bound by an agreement older than herself. Now circumstances had changed. No one asked what those circumstances were. Not yet. The trade officer tried to refuse politely, explaining that official exchanges required proper authority. The girl listened, then calmly placed a small sealed device on the platform between them. It was ancient in design, yet the materials were beyond anything humans could identify. She explained that this was the trade marker proof of her authority. Her mother had given it to her. That was when the station's main AI intervened. In a tone stripped of emotion, it confirmed the device was authentic, the agreement was real. And according to the contract, any representative bearing the marker must be heard, regardless of age. The mood shifted instantly. What had seemed like a misunderstanding now felt like the opening move of something far larger. Officers realized this child was not here by accident. She had been sent or had come, because there was no other choice. As medical scans quietly ran in the background, a human technician noticed something troubling. The girl's biological reading showed signs of long-term stress and exhaustion. This was not a short journey. This was not a safe one. Whatever had kept her mother away had been serious enough to send a child alone across the stars. The trade officer finally nodded and invited her inside the station. As she followed, the girl glanced once at her small ship, her expression unreadable. No one noticed the faint signal it emitted at that moment, a signal that traveled far beyond human space. High above the station, unseen sensors shifted their focus. Someone else was watching. Inside Port Helios, the air felt different as the little alien girl walked through the long white corridors surrounded by human officers. The station was always loud and busy, yet now many workers stopped and stared. There was no fear in the girl's steps, only purpose. She walked as someone who knew exactly why she was there and how important her task was. The humans felt uneasy because children were meant to be protected, not placed at the center of interstellar agreements. The Trade Council chamber was large and circular designed, so no species would stand above another. The girl was offered a seat, but she chose to remain standing. She explained in calm, simple words that her people believed duty did not wait for age. Her mother had taught her that promises were living things that must be honored, or they would die. She spoke of trade not as profit, but as balance, between survival and extinction, between trust and silence. The Human Council asked where her mother was. The girl paused only once, her eyes lowered and her voice softened. She said her mother had become too weak to travel. She did not say dead. She did not say alive. Humans understood that the truth rested somewhere painful between those words. The silence that followed carried more weight than any explanation. She began to explain the agreement. Her people lived near a dangerous region of space, where stars collapsed without warning. They possessed knowledge and materials that could help humans explore safely. In return, they needed protection and medical support. Trade had been negotiated over many cycles, always in peace, always in respect. Her mother had been the bridge between their worlds. Now that bridge was breaking, and the girl had stepped into its place. Human officers struggled to reconcile what they were hearing. The contract was real. The need was real. But allowing a child to carry such responsibility went against every human instinct. Their laws protected the young above all else. Yet galactic law was clear. Authority was defined by role, not age. As discussions continued, security teams reviewed more data. The girl's species was small and rarely seen. Their worlds lacked strong defenses. Their survival depended on alliances that honored words more than weapons. This made them targets. In a galaxy that respected power above compassion, humans realized that this trade was not just an exchange. It was a lifeline. The girl watched the humans carefully. She noticed how they spoke softly when addressing her, how they hesitated before making decisions. She did not mistake this for weakness. Her mother had told her humans were strange. They feared what they could become more than what they already were. She remembered those words and felt hope when asked why she had volunteered. She answered simply, her people drew lots. Her name was chosen. She accepted without complaint. Duty did not ask if one was ready. Duty only asked if one would stand. When she spoke those words, the room fell silent once more. Many humans felt something shift inside them, a familiar sense of responsibility, older than any law behind the council walls. Something else moved. A foreign signal crossed the edge of the system. Old rivals had noticed the girl's ship. The absence of her mother had not gone unnoticed by others less honorable. Then humans did not yet know they were being tested. Not by a child, but by the choices they would make because of her. The meeting ended without a final decision. The girl was escorted to a guest quarters designed for diplomats, twice the size of her ship and far warmer. She sat on the bed and held a small object hidden in her sleeve, a token her mother had pressed into her hand before she left, a reminder that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. As the station lights dimmed into artificial night, alerts quietly lit up in the command center. Unidentified ships had entered long-range detection. The trade was no longer private, and the child who came to replace her mother had become the center of a storm that would decide far more than commerce. The universe was watching to see what humans would do next. Morning cycle began on Port Helios, with a quiet tension that spread through every corridor. Human officers moved with purpose, yet spoke less than usual. The presence of the alien child had changed the rhythm of the station. Nothing about this trade felt routine anymore. The girl was brought back to the council chamber, where senior human representatives waited. They had spent the night reviewing old records and forgotten agreements. What they found disturbed them. The trade contract with the girl's species was older than most human colonies. It had been signed during humanity's early expansion, when humans were still learning their place in the galaxy. Back then humans had been weak yet honest, and that honesty had earned trust. The girl stood before them once again, calm and focused. She listened as the humans asked deeper questions about the trade. This time she did not speak of materials or technology. Instead she spoke of survival. She explained that the trade item her people offered was not a resource but knowledge of unstable star regions, hidden routes and safe passages through space storms. This knowledge had saved countless ships over the years, including human ones. In return her people received protection, agreements, medical aid, and the promise that humans would answer if they called. It was never meant to be a military alliance, only a bond of responsibility. Her mother had believed humans would always honor that bond, because humans remembered what it was like to be vulnerable. The humans felt the weight of those words. The girl was not here to negotiate prices. She was here to remind them of who they once were. Some council members argued that emotions had no place in galactic politics. Others remained silent, knowing that without emotion humanity would have never survived its early years. As the discussion continued, new data arrived from long-range sensors. Unknown ships had been detected at the edge of the system. They were not broadcasting and not approaching openly. This suggested observation, not trade. The girl noticed the shift in the room. She asked one simple question: "Are we no longer alone?" The humans did not answer immediately. Their hesitation was answer enough. The girl nodded, as if she had expected this. She explained that her species had enemies who waited patiently for weakness. The absence of her mother had signaled opportunity. Sending a child was not only duty but strategy. Her people believed humans would protect a child even if they would hesitate to protect a distant ally. That truth struck hard. Humanity was being tested, not by force, but by trust. If they rejected the trade or delayed too long, her people would fall, and the galaxy would learn that human promises had limits. Security officers reported another detail. The unknown ships matched the profile of a dominant alien faction known for absorbing weaker civilizations. They did not trade. They took if the girl's species disappeared, no one would challenge their claim. The council realized the trade itself was the secret. It was never about what was exchanged, but about who stood when standing was dangerous. The girl's mother had understood this. She had believed humans would choose honor over fear, even when the cost was high. The girl was asked if she was afraid. She answered honestly, yes, but fear did not excuse failure. Her voice did not shake. When she spoke of her people, she spoke as if she carried all of them inside her small frame. Humans saw then that she was not pretending to be strong. She had become strong because she had no alternative. Outside the chamber, military readiness quietly increased. Human ships adjusted their positions without drawing attention. They did not know if conflict would come, but they prepared anyway, not because of orders, but because no one wanted to be unready. If a child needed protection, as the meeting ended, the council requested time to decide. The girl agreed. She trusted them because her mother had trusted them. Trust was not something her people withdrew once given. In a dark corner of space, the watching ships adjusted their course. The test was nearly complete. They waited to see if humanity would turn away or step forward. On Port Helios, a quiet understanding spread among the humans. This trade would change them, whether they accepted it or not. Warning came without sound. Across Port Helios, screens shifted from routine data to glowing alerts. Unidentified vessels had moved closer, now clearly visible on long-range sensors. Their formation was deliberate, and confident human analysts recognized the pattern. Immediately, it was not exploration, it was pressure. The alien girl stood beside the human commander, in the observation hall, watching distant lights appear against the dark. Her expression remained calm, but her hands tightened slightly at her sides. She knew these ships. She had seen them in stories and warnings shared by her elders. They belonged to a faction that believed strength was permission. The human commander ordered a communication attempt. The message was clear and formal, identifying Port Helios as a neutral trade station and requesting peaceful intent. The response came moments later, sharp and dismissive. The faction demanded custody of the girl, claiming her people had defaulted on protection agreements. They stated the trade was void, and the child was now a bargaining asset. The chamber grew tense. Human officers felt a surge of anger masked beneath discipline. The girl listened without interrupting. When the message ended, she spoke quietly, saying her people never defaulted. The agreements had been honored until her mother fell ill. The faction had waited for that moment. They always waited. Human legal advisors reviewed the claim and found it false. The faction had no lawful right to the girl. But galactic law meant little to those who enforced their will with fleets. The commander asked the girl what would happen if she were surrendered. The girl answered simply her people would disappear. Not immediately, but surely. That answer settled something inside the humans. This was no longer a trade dispute, it was a moral line. The commander issued a station-wide status alert, not red, but amber preparation without provocation. Ships were repositioned. Defense grids quietly activated. The station did not threaten, it stood ready. The faction responded by moving closer. Their ships were massive, dark, and armored, built to intimidate. They transmitted again, warning that resistance would be remembered. Across the station, civilians were moved to safe zones without panic. Humans worked with calm efficiency, as they always did in crisis. The girl was escorted to a secure chamber. The room was reinforced yet comfortable. She noticed this detail and understood. Humans protected without making it feel like a cage. She asked the officer if humans would be harmed because of her. The officer answered, honestly, yes, possibly. But some things were worth the risk. She absorbed that answer in silence, remembering her mother's words. Humans choose who they are when no one forces them. Back in the command hall, the faction made their move. They launched unmanned probes toward the station. Not an attack, but a message. Humans interpreted it clearly. This was a countdown. The faction expected compliance before escalation. The Human Council convened one final time. There were voices of caution, reminders of cost and consequence, but there were also memories, stories of humanity's past when others had stood by while humans struggled. Those memories carried weight. Humanity had sworn never to be that kind of observer again. The decision was made quietly. Without ceremony, the trade would stand. The girl would remain under human protection. Any attempt to seize her would be treated as hostile. The message was sent firm and unyielding. The response from the faction was silence followed by movement. Their ships shifted into attack formation. The line had been crossed. The girl felt the change through the station floor. A deep vibration like distant thunder. She closed her eyes for a moment, then looked at the human guard beside her. She thanked him for listening to her story. He nodded, unable to find words in the darkness beyond Port Helios. Weapons powered up, energy signatures spiked. The galaxy held its breath. For the first time in many cycles, the faction realized something unsettling. Humans were not afraid, they had chosen, and choice was the most dangerous weapon of all.
Port Helios no longer felt like a trade station, it felt like a promise made. Solid steel corridors echoed with controlled movement. As human crews took their positions, there was no shouting, no panic, only focus. Humanity had faced moments like this before, when the cost of action was known and the cost of inaction was worse. The alien girl watched events unfold from the secure chamber through a wide viewing panel. She could see fragments of space flickering with distant energy signatures. She understood enough of human behavior now to recognize resolve. When humans moved like this, they had already decided who they were going to be. The human commander stood before the assembled officers and spoke plainly. He did not mention profit or politics. He spoke of protection of guests, of honoring agreements, and of the kind of species humans chose to remain. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Every officer understood this was not about winning, it was about standing. A final transmission was sent to the approaching faction. Humans stated clearly that the child was under their protection. They cited ancient human laws regarding the safety of the young and the responsibility of those with power to shield those without. The message ended with a warning: any attempt to take her would be resisted. The response came quickly: hostile and mocking. The faction dismissed human values as weakness. They reminded humans of the difference in fleet strength. They promised swift consequences. Humanity listened and did not retreat. The girl asked permission to speak. She was brought to the command hall where officers paused to make space for her. She thanked the humans for their decision. She said her mother believed humans would protect her not because of treaties, but because they remembered being small in a vast universe. She said that belief was now proven. Those words struck deeper than any threat. The commander ordered all defensive systems, fully active. Human ships formed a protective pattern around the station, not aggressive, not submissive, simply unmovable. The first hostile action came without warning. A probing strike targeted the outer defense grid. It was meant to test response, not to destroy. Humanity answered immediately with precision. The grid held energy dissipated harmlessly into space. The message was clear: humans were ready. Throughout the station, civilians watched silently. Children held hands, adults whispered prayers in many languages. No one asked why this was happening. They knew a child was being protected. The girl felt fear, now real and sharp, but she did not run. She stood beside the humans and witnessed what courage looked like when shared. She realized her duty had already been fulfilled, not by completing a trade, but by reminding another species of its own heart. The faction escalated. Their ships' advanced weapons charging. Space seemed to tighten around Port Helios. Human pilots reported in calm voices. They acknowledged orders and prepared for engagement, not with hatred but with resolve. Then something unexpected happened. Long-range sensors detected movement beyond the battlefield. News signals emerged, not hostile but watching. Other species had arrived, drawn by the tension, drawn by curiosity. They saw humans standing between power and innocence. The commander understood the shift. The galaxy was paying attention. This moment would be remembered. Whatever happened next would define humanity's reputation for generations. The girl felt a quiet warmth. As she watched human ships hold their line, she thought of her mother lying beneath dim lights on a distant world, trusting her daughter to carry a hope. She could no longer protect herself. The first true strike came, then a blast aimed directly at the station. Humanity responded with full force. Defensive fire intercepted the attack, exploding in a silent bloom of light. Space lit up with the consequence of choice. The battle had begun, but something else had begun too. A story that would travel far beyond this system. A story of a species that stood not because it was strongest, but because it refused to step aside. The first moments of open conflict unfolded in near silence, broken only by calm reports from human pilots and tactical officers. Port Helios remained steady at the center of the formation, its defense grid glowing as it absorbed scattered impacts. Humanity did not rush forward. They held their position like a wall built from patience and purpose. Human ships moved as one, each vessel covered another, forming layers of protection around the station. The strategy was not meant to destroy the enemy quickly, it was meant to endure. Humans understood endurance. They had survived harsh worlds long before they reached the stars. The opposing faction expected fear, retreat, or chaos. Instead, they encountered coordination and restraint. Their heavier ships unleashed concentrated firepower, yet every strike met calculated response. Human weapons disabled systems rather than obliterating hulls, targeting engines, communication arrays, and weapon nodes. The message was intentional. Humanity was not here to conquer. Inside the station, the alien girl watched from the command hall. Her small hands rested on the edge of the console. As she followed the battle maps, she saw human symbols hold steady even when pushed. She noticed something else too. Human crews checked on each other, constantly asking for status, offering assistance, never leaving a ship alone. She asked the commander why humans fought this way. He answered without looking away from the display, because we fight to protect, not to dominate. Those words settled deep within her. The faction began to falter. Their tactics relied on overwhelming force and fear, but fear was not spreading. Panic did not bloom among the humans. Instead, something quieter and more dangerous took its place: determination. The realization dawned on the attackers that they were not facing a single station or fleet, they were facing a united decision. A critical moment came when one human ship took heavy damage. The vessel drifted, its engines failing. For a breath of time, the enemy prepared to strike it down. Instead, 3 human ships broke formation without hesitation, shielding the damaged craft and towing it to safety. The maneuver exposed them to danger, but none pulled back. Observers across the system recorded the moment. It spread rapidly among neutral ships watching from afar. Humanity was revealing something rare, a willingness to risk loss for one another, and for someone not even their own. The alien girl felt tears form, though she did not wipe them away. She remembered stories of her people hiding, running, surviving quietly. She had never seen a species stand so openly against stronger force simply because it was right. The enemy faction attempted one final show of dominance. They powered their largest weapon, aiming not at the station but at the space beyond, hoping to intimidate. Humanity responded differently. They broadcast a message on open channels for all to hear. Humans stated that any further aggression would be met with full defensive response, but they also offered something unexpected: a chance to withdraw without pursuit. The offer stunned the attackers. They had never been given mercy from a position of strength. It unsettled them more than violence. The hesitation that followed was brief but costly. Their formation wavered. Human ships advanced just enough to reinforce the line, not chasing, not threatening, just present. Then the final shift occurred. Sensors detected the enemy fleet pulling back. Engines flared, turning away from Port Helios. The faction retreated, not defeated in battle but denied victory in purpose. A wave of relief passed through the station, but it was controlled, restrained. Humans did not celebrate. They checked damage, assisted injured crews, and secured the perimeter. Their first concern was not triumph, but care. The girl approached the commander. She asked if the danger was over. He answered that danger never truly ended, but this moment had passed. She bowed her head in gratitude, a gesture from her culture. The humans returned it awkwardly but sincerely. A message arrived from her homeworld, transmitted through fragile channels. Her mother was alive, weakened but aware. She had watched the events unfold through distant feeds. She sent only a few words: "You chose well." The girl closed her eyes, holding those words close around her. Humans resumed their duties, the station slowly returning to motion. But something had changed. A quiet bond now existed, written not in contracts but in action. Across the galaxy, stories began to move faster than ships. Stories of humans who stood together when it mattered most. Part 6. When Humans Stand Together. The first moments of open conflict unfolded in near silence. As Port Helios remained steady at the center of space, human pilots spoke in calm, measured voices while tactical officers tracked every movement on glowing displays. There was no panic, only control. Humanity did not rush forward or scatter. They held their position like a wall, shaped by experience and resolve. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, forming layered defenses around the station. Each vessel protected another, creating a living shield. The plan was not to overwhelm the enemy with force, but to endure. Humans had learned long ago that survival often depended on patience rather than power. The opposing faction attacked with heavy weapons, expecting fear and retreat. Instead, they met discipline. Human counterfire was precise, disabling engines and weapons rather than destroying ships outright. The message was clear: humans were not here to dominate or erase, they were here to protect. From the command hall, the little alien girl watched every movement. Her small hands rested on the console as she followed the battle map. Human symbols held their ground even when pushed back. She noticed something that surprised her. Human crews constantly checked on one another, sharing status updates, offering help, and never abandoning a damaged ship. She asked the commander why humans fought this way. He answered simply, "Because we protect what is entrusted to us." The words carried more strength than any weapon. The enemy began to falter. Their strategy relied on fear, but fear did not spread. Determination did. The attackers realized they were not facing a single station or fleet, but a united decision shared by every human present. A critical moment came when one human ship lost power and drifted helplessly. The enemy prepared to strike it down. Instead, 3 human ships broke formation, immediately placing themselves between the damaged vessel and incoming fire. They absorbed the risk and towed their ally to safety without hesitation. Observers across the system recorded the act. Neutral ships watching from afar transmitted the images. Humanity was revealing something rare, a willingness to risk loss not for conquest, but for loyalty and compassion. The alien girl felt tears form, though she did not wipe them away. She remembered her people surviving, quietly hiding when stronger forces came. She had never seen a species stand openly and say no. The enemy faction attempted one final intimidation, powering a massive weapon. Humanity responded not with escalation but with a broadcast heard by all. They stated clearly that further aggression would be resisted but withdrawal would be allowed without pursuit. It was mercy offered from strength. The attackers hesitated. Confusion rippled through their formation. They had never been shown restraint where power existed. That moment of doubt was enough. Engines flared and the fleet turned away, retreating from Port Helios. Relief spread through the station, but there was no celebration. Humans immediately shifted to recovery, checking injuries, repairing ships, and securing the perimeter. Their focus remained on care, not victory. The girl approached the commander, asking if the danger was over. He answered honestly that danger never truly ended, but this moment had passed. She bowed her head in gratitude, and the humans returned the gesture in their own imperfect way. A fragile transmission arrived from her homeworld. Her mother was alive, weakened, but aware she had seen everything. Her message was short: you chose well. The girl held those words close as Port Helios slowly returned to motion around her. Humans resumed their duties, but something had changed. A bond had been formed, not through contracts but through action. Across the galaxy the story began to spread. A story of humans who stood together when it mattered most. Port Helios entered a long, quiet cycle. After the conflict, the station lights softened and traffic slowed as repairs continued. Human crews moved through the corridors with a sense of shared understanding. The danger had passed, but its meaning remained heavy and clear. This place would be remembered not as a battlefield but as a choice made visible. The little alien girl stood near a wide observation window, watching stars drift past. Her journey was almost complete, yet she felt changed in ways she could not fully explain. She had come as a replacement for her mother, carrying duty like armor. Now she carried something more: hope. The Human Council reconvened, not to debate but to affirm. The trade agreement was renewed and expanded. Humanity committed long-term protection, medical aid, and shared exploration. The agreement was no longer secret or fragile, it was public and strong. Any threat against her people would be treated as a threat against humans themselves. When the decision was announced, the girl bowed deeply. Her culture reserved that gesture for moments of life-changing importance. She thanked the humans not with emotion but with certainty. She said her people would remember this not as rescue but as respect. Preparations were made for her return home. A human escort was offered, not as guards but as companions. She accepted, knowing the message it would send: a child returning not alone but alongside allies. Before departure, the girl asked to speak to the station crew. She stood in the central hall surrounded by humans of many nations and worlds. She spoke in simple words, saying she had come afraid but leaving stronger because humans had shown her what standing together meant. She said her mother believed humans were dangerous only to those who harmed the innocent. Now the galaxy would believe it too. The words spread quickly beyond Port Helios through trade routes and data streams across neutral stations and distant systems. Other species listened. They saw the recordings. They studied the battle. They understood the message. Humanity did not seek dominance, but would not abandon responsibility once accepted. The escort fleet launched quietly. No banners, no celebration, just steady engines and shared purpose. The girl watched Port Helios grow smaller behind her, knowing she would never forget it. That station had been a place of decision, and its echo would follow her across her life. On her homeworld, the sky glowed softly as human ships arrived, not in formation but in welcome. Her people gathered, uncertain yet hopeful. When the girl stepped forward beside the humans, the crowd felt something shift. The old fear eased, replaced by possibility. Her mother waited, surrounded by healers. Weak but smiling, she reached for her daughter and held her close. The girl did not speak. She did not need to. The promise had already been fulfilled. In the cycles that followed, the alliance changed the region. Trade routes became safer, exploration expanded, knowledge was shared, not hoarded. The faction that had threatened them never returned. Word had spread that humans did not forget and did not turn away. Across the galaxy, children of many species heard a new kind of story, not of war or conquest but of a moment when a small voice was heard by a powerful species and answered with action. Humans returned to their worlds carrying the weight of that choice. They told the story not with pride but with quiet certainty. This was who they were now, not because of strength alone but because of responsibility. And far beyond the edge of map space, a simple truth took hold: humanity was not feared for its weapons nor admired for its technology. Humanity was respected because when a child stood alone among the stars, humans stood with her.